Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next part of our team preseason power rankings. Today, we're doing the Dallas Cowboys at 21. I know there's a lot of people that aren't happy with this, giving us the
People are going to be pissed.
Yeah,
People are going to be
giving us
pissed.
the Cowboys hater label. And we might not like the Cowboys too much.
I was going to say you're right. It's just
we might not like them that much.
This isn't This is an objective ranking for us.
But this ranking, we have you guys here not because screw the Cowboys, let's screw them over. No, we're doing this because the fact is the Cowboys don't look overly great at this moment. Just that simple. And there's a lot of aspects of it. Dean, before we get into the culture, which by the way is one of the big reasons why, is there anything you want to say before we hop into it?
Yeah, this Cowboys team you think about what Jerry Jones said this offseason. We want to go all in for a Super Bowl, and they just didn't do that. Like they did the opposite of that. It almost feels like they've built for the future, and it's like, which is good. You always want to build for your future, but this feels like we are about to change an era of a certain Cowboys quarterback relatively soon, in my eyes. The way this team was drafted, the way this team attacked free agency, which, spoiler warning, they didn't attack free agency. It's just a really weird offseason that, for a team that, if they had done the offseason how they had said, be a lot higher on this list.
No, that's really all they had to do. All they had to do was try and go all in. Right? Like, that's the funny thing. If they tried to, they would be a lot higher. I really do feel like that. Because they are allowing narratives to surround this team that are only going to hurt them. Only going to hurt them. If they didn't even say that they were going to go all in, I feel like then they would be in a better spot. Right? Because I think the owner going out and saying that creates something in the locker room
of like, yeah, we're going to go compete for a Super Bowl this season.
Yeah, exactly. And, of course, you're always competing for a Super Bowl, so it's not a bad thing to try and compete. But it creates like this, it creates complacency, right? When you say you're going to go all in, and then you do nothing that shows that makes all the players and all the coaches think, oh, so we have a roster that could win a Super Bowl. Okay, cool. It creates complacency. That's what that creates. And I think the owner having as much power, Jerry Jones having as much power as he does, and making it blatantly obvious that his first priority and really only priority is making profit, also hurts the culture of this football team. Okay? It's a priority to make money. But the fact that I feel confident that everyone in that locker room agrees that Jerry Jones would trade away every win this season for a couple $1 million each. Yeah. It's hard for me to feel good about how these players are going to play when they know their owner, the guy who's making all the decisions, would be fine going 0-16 if it means making a couple extra $1 million. Right? It sucks. It sucks to be a player in that locker room. And the entire head coach stuff, because if they were really going all in, McCarthy would not be their head coach. Let's be honest here.
Correct.
He hasn't been anywhere close to getting them where they need to be. It doesn't matter how much you're able to beat the New York Giants or the Washington Commanders by. You have to be able to beat the good teams if you want to go ahead and win a Super Bowl. There's a reason.
You gotta not lose by 20-something or near 20-something in the first round of the playoffs to a wild card team.
Exactly. To one of the youngest teams in football. Mm-hmm. Right?
Against your former team, actually.
Exactly.
Mike McCarthy.
Yeah. Why is it that McCarthy is still around? You might ask yourself. Jerry Jones, at least this is my theory, Jerry Jones does not fire coaches mid-tenure. That's why Jason Garrett stuck around for so long, right? He doesn't like to waste the money. That is the only reason I could think of them keeping McCarthy around. Because, again, he has made it so clear that he can't get it done.
And to be very fair, in not defense of McCarthy, because I'm kind of the same way with him, but like, yes, this offense was fantastic This was a good team last year. This was a really good team last year until they hit the playoffs. And that's where it matters as a head coach. And I would have changed Garbs for sure. But he does have a regular season to back it up.
So, hold on. I'm not disagreeing, but let me just make it clear because there's a little bit of specifics that go into that. He looks good in the regular season because some of these games in the regular season, he's going out there and he is, stomping on the Commanders. He's stomping on the Giants.
Yes,
then what happens when he plays against the 49ers? Then what happens when he plays against any team with a winning record?
No, I agree with
loss.
You. I totally agree.
So it's just like
I was just saying, you could argue he's regular season. That's all I was saying. But I agree. I would have fired him. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I imagine the entire locker room is baffled by the fact he's still there. Again, this goes back to culture, right? Do we really think McCarthy is positively affecting the culture of this football team? Hell no. Hell no. But at least they're making money. Again, that's their priority, and they're doing a good job. They're one of the most marketable franchises in all of sports. So you know what? They're doing a good job. We got to give them their credit for that. Because if it were a power ranking based on most profitable teams, they would be number one.
They would.
And that's all they care about. So you know what? I give them their flowers for that.
But let's now move to the offense and offense coordinator Brian Schottenheimer, who, after Kellen Moore leaves, people were concerned, how's this offense going to look? And this offense looked really, really good for the most part last year. It was phenomenal. I had Dak Prescott as an MVP candidate. Brian Schottenheimer was a huge part of that. Tell me about Brian Schottenheimer real quick.
Well, I think Schottenheimer and McCarthy are kind of going to agree on this offense and how it's going to be ran. But whether it's Schottenheimer or McCarthy, I'm just going to go off how that offense looked last year. And the way that offense looked last year, it was, CeeDee Lamb, we're going to give you the ball, and then the next play we're going to give you the ball again, and then we're going to do it again, and then again, and then again, which is weird.
And it worked.
It did against the bad teams. Again, there's a big reason why they're able to score 40 against the bad teams and then go ahead and score very little against the good teams. But, okay, you're not wrong. It did work because CeeDee Lamb is an absolute dog. But it would be nice to, maybe have a little bit of a run game going.
It'd be so nice to have a run game, which is where...
It's so funny. Because McCarthy said the second that Kellen Moore got fired, we want to run the football. And that's why Kellen Moore's gone.
They could not run the football.
And then they could not
run the football.
Not even remotely. It's just the lack of willingness to throw it to even scheme other guys open.
And I wanted to, before you kept going, what I was going to allude to was the offense looked good for the most part last year. And then he played good defensive coordinators, not even good teams. Like, he played the Cardinals and Josh Gannon, and that was rough, man.
Because Gannon knows, if you're just going to feed 88, let me prevent 88 from getting the ball.
Yeah.
It's not a different algorithm, man. It really isn't. And the good thing is, Dak Prescott is a smart quarterback, and it felt like a lot of the time he would kind of have to make his own stuff up. Mm-hmm. I think that was why... We'll get into it. I want to praise Dak Prescott a lot here because I do think he was the reason that a completely non-NFL offense looked NFL caliber. I think that what Dak did in terms of CeeDee Lamb clearly being the only one designed to actually get the football and him still throwing to these routes that were very clear decoys and these receivers that are very clearly only on the field because they have to field 11 men. I got to give Dak a lot of credit for that. I have to give the offensive line a lot of credit because they're a ridiculously talented unit, too. This offense is more about the pieces, and that's the problem, right? It's one thing to scheme up ways to maximize the pieces. It's another thing to make a scheme with full, entire awareness that you're completely piece reliant, I guess.
Right.
I don't think that that's a good way to be building an offense. And listen, I know it sounds illegitimate, but I'm being truthful when I say this entire offense was so simplistic that the only advanced adaptations that they would make would be moving CeeDee Lamb to the slot or just scheming up some type of way to get CeeDee Lamb the ball. Like, that was what it was. Besides that, it was the stuff I got to give Dak Prescott a lot of credit for. Because let me tell you right now, the biggest difference between Schottenheimer and Kellen Moore's offense that I guess is a good thing towards Schottenheimer is how much freedom Schottenheimer gave Dak and how great Dak was at using that freedom. I'm just going to get into the quarterbacks now, if that's fine.
Go ahead.
Prescott, I truly think, is a phenomenal quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they gave him a lot of extra control, and, of course, that's important because the offense is so single-read dependent, and when it's so single-read dependent, you better give Dak Prescott the pieces to control the pre-snap look as much as possible to open up that single read, right? They weren't operating on a snap count. They were operating on a pre-snap checklist. I'm reading off my notes right now because I phrased this very carefully. They're operating on a pre-snap checklist. And when that pre-snap checklist was completed, that was when you heard that, here we go! Like, that's what that was. It was a green light to the team. Okay, I made my adaptations to the play. Now snap the ball. I'll catch it. I'll complete the pass. And let me say right now, Dak Prescott did a really good job making those reads. He did.
There's a reason he was the MVP. He was an MVP candidate last year. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, there's stuff to be said. I think Dak is a top. I mean, there's some people who still think Dak is a top 10 quarterback. He's a top 10 quarterback, guys. He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there is something to be said about him shrinking in big games because he still does do that. And you saw that in that Packers game where, hey, I get it. This is a simple offense. That Packers defense is a simple defense. The coordinator who should not be named happened to be on the this is the second time I've said that phrase, but Joe Barry was that bad.
Yeah.
And Dak folded. And, like, it was a lot of passes that were, like, straight up, why did you throw that football?
Yeah, in all fairness, though, to him, that entire Cowboys team did not seem ready to play.
Correct.
There was not a single aspect of that team, even the kicker that we're going to go into, who was one of their best players this year, one of their most efficient players, even he was missing extra points in that game. Like, everything about that game was, from the Cowboys' perspective, it seemed like they didn't practice all week. Like, it was awful in every way. And
which comes back to Mike McCarthy being
exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
But here's the thing with Dak too, is that's not the first time.
Yeah. You're correct.
As much as I do love Dak, he seems to be a playoff sinker.
Yeah. And that's why I'm going to make a comparison that I don't want people to take as too high of praise. But I am saying if there is a Peyton Manning in this league, if there is a guy who plays a similar type of football from, operating the game from a mental perspective and then purely relying off of that along with good traits and kind of fading in the postseason, it would be a Dak Prescott. That's the closest you got. But then eventually Peyton Manning at least started to get it together in the playoffs. Eventually, at least some seasons. We don't see Dak doing that, and I think part of that might be the pieces, but I also think part of it is the reality of, he's not big enough for the moment.
Weird thing, because you could totally say it's the pieces a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But there are also just, like, in these big moments,
plays.
You look on film, and it's just like, Dak, what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
What I mean? Like, both picks against the Packers were just, like, Dak not seeing the field correctly, throwing a slant when there was a guy directly in the path of the play. Yeah. And it's like, man, I don't know what's going on. It's just one of those. It's like he is such a mental quarterback until the pressure's just too high, and it's like you hope he can overcome it.
And I think that's what it is. Genuinely, I think it genuinely is just the pressure of the moment is too big for him. I think that's what it is. And listen, I think it would help if he had what Peyton Manning once had in terms of the best receiver duo in the league by far, with a Marvin Harrison on one end and a Reggie Wayne on the other. Instead, he has CeeDee Lamb and cast of no ones. Let's be honest. Even if they're notable names, they suck at this point. Let's be legitimate here. And I feel like that's part of the reason they're planning on maybe moving on from him. That's why they traded for Trey Lance, maybe to develop a potential replacement for down the line.
But yeah, let's move to Trey Lance real quick because that is a really interesting thing going on. I don't know your thoughts on Trey Lance. I liked him coming out of the draft, and I also thought he never got much of a chance in San Francisco, while also not being a good fit for what San Francisco wanted to do. So you always thought of him as a developmental player. Maybe they can develop it because the traits are evident. He's a great arm, great mobility, great size, everything you want trait wise from a quarterback. Very young player. He could be the eventual piece of like, hey, if we move on from Dak, we'll give you the chance. We'll see. Again, I always liked him. I never thought he got much of a chance, but like to say he was a good fit in San Francisco was lying. He was not a good fit for San Francisco and their scheme.
Which makes you question, why the hell did you draft him that early? But that's a San Francisco question, right?
Yeah.
I also do think the fact that Dak Prescott hasn't been signed long-term does cause more locker room problems, right? Mm-hmm. What's going on with our leader? How can we expect him to lead if we know he's going to be gone after this year? And how could we really care that he's going to be... how could we really care that he's going to be gone after this year if you guys aren't making the most out of what could potentially be his last year? Because let's be honest, he didn't even get remotely close to making the most out of what could potentially be his last year because they made one free agency signing. It was awful.
And I just want to make something super clear. I think they should pay Dak Prescott.
They should. They should.
I think they should.
But will they?
They won't. I am so unless he puts together, unless they win a playoff game, they won't re-sign Dak Prescott. Well, I'm so adamant about that. And it sucks because Dak Prescott is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in this league, and he is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. He really is.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a matter of them waiting for the next coach to make that decision because McCarthy's going to be gone.
I think it's Jerry Jones making that decision.
Well, yeah, I think that Jerry Jones is going to make the decision on the next coach, and they don't want that next coach to be binded to Dak Prescott. Yeah. And if that next coach wants to move on from him, okay, then move on. But if you want to keep Dak around, okay, sign him to a new deal then. Like, they're going to let that next coach make that call, I think. I also think that's why a lot of offensive coordinators last year, the Ben Johnsons of the world, the Bobby Slowicks, I thought that part of the reason they didn't take that job was because they want this Cowboys job. But that's a discussion for another time. Cowboys have Cooper Rush as a backup too, just a safe backup. Trey Lance is more of the high upside guy.
Do you guys remember when everybody thought Cooper Rush was better than Dak Prescott? I do.
Yeah, that was... World was a different place when Mike Lennon was playing football, man. Cooper Rush is a good backup, though.
He's a good backup. Yeah. He's a good backup.
But he will never be Dak Prescott.
It's actually one of the better quarterback rooms in the league.
Yeah, it is. It is. It sure sucks that they're fine with just letting guys walk out, but it is what it is. Let's talk about this wide receiver room, or as I like to call it, the CeeDee Lamb and everyone else.
Well, I'll say this one thing before we get to that. If Dak Prescott were to leave, it would make me happy because it'd feel better to root for him because I am a Cowboys hater. I don't want the Cowboys to win, bro. It's just like if he's on a different team, I can root for him more. But joke aside, let's move to these receivers and start with the guy they fed last year in CeeDee Lamb because he is, as you said, a dog, a phenomenal football player, one of the best wide receivers in the league.
Yeah, for sure. He's remarkable. If the ball is heading in his direction, he's going to make some insane adjustments and pull it in, even through contact. Like, he is spectacular at that. He's someone...
He's such a good route runner.
Yeah,
sorry,
great route runner.
I just wanted to say, just such a
great route runner who could separate because of that route running, but then he'll also make plays after the catch, right? He's someone who literally does it all. Such a complete receiver, contested catcher, someone that will make insane adjustments to the ball, and he has a very complete route tree. He's a good route runner while running all those different routes. He has the speed too. Just a very, very complete player.
And then we move on to the nobodies that you had mentioned. And then we start with Brandon Cooks, who, unfortunately, Brandon Cooks used to be really good.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Brandon Cooks is now old, and he's not the same player, guys. As a number 2, you don't feel fantastic. You could technically do worse. You don't feel good. You could technically do worse. You don't feel good. It's not good. It's not a good number.
I legitimately question if Brandon Cooks can even be like a high-end 4 at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's at a point. What was Brandon Cooks' big skill? It was route running. It was separation.
It was separation, yep.
But now, he can't get enough separation for you to complete a pass to him. And it's not like he's a big body, right? He's someone that needs to get a lot of separation, right? Brandon Cooks is someone that, I'll be honest, he's just on the field.
He is just
that is all. Like, you don't want to leave him wide open because he'll catch the ball if he's wide open.
At this point, I'd say Jalen Tolbert's probably the second number 2 receiver on this team.
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
And that's a problem.
But here's the thing: Brandon Cooks is still going to start above him because that's how this Cowboys organization works.
That's true. But even if they did let Tolbert play the wide receiver 2 role, he's like a nice wide receiver 5, right? Like, it is legitimately CeeDee Lamb and then not a single other starting caliber receiver. I
had a Cowboys fan talk to me about Kevontae Turpin. And
I was going to say Turpin is a nice gadget guy.
That's what I was going to say. He's a gadget guy. That's it.
He's a gadget guy and a great special teamer. That is all. That is all. And again, that's a problem because let's look at the other big skills group here, right? The running backs. Oh, yeah, Dallas Cowboys, the running backs, they used to have, DeMarco Murray, and before that, Emmitt Smith, and, Ezekiel Elliott was great, and Tony Dorsett back in the day, and oh my God, Tony Pollard, remember, he was good for like a year. Oh my, the Dallas Cowboys, Herschel Walker, come on.
I want to say something real quick here. I posted a TikTok after the draft where they didn't draft a running back, and I was like, what the hell are the Cowboys doing? Like, what are you doing with this running back room? I understand running backs not the most valuable position in the NFL anymore, right? Gotta have somebody back there as a running back, dude.
Especially when you don't have more than one receiver.
Yep.
Especially in that situation.
There is a case to say that, like, Zeke actually had some juice with the Patriots. He's not a running back 1, though. Yeah, I like him as a complimentary piece.
I like him as a blocker, and I think he can run tough still.
Yes, I think he's a complimentary piece. This is the top runner on your team, dude.
And again, this is the Dallas Cowboys. Like, I know I said it. Ezekiel Elliott, DeMarco Murray, Emmitt Smith, Herschel Walker, Tony Dorsett, Rico Dowell. I mean, that's where we are, really? Deuce Vaughn. Like, this is what this is. Yeah, Royce Freeman. Remember him.
Oregon legend, by the way. Yeah. I always thought he was going to be really good, but he never did.
It's
whatever.
It's in a bad spot, man. It's in a bad spot. Hunter Lipke might be their best ball carrier.
Dude, let me cook on Hunter Lipke, please. I love Hunter Lipke. Anyway, in the video, like, legit Cowboys fans were like, if you're saying this, you don't know about Rico Dowdle. I know full well about Rico Dowdle, dude. Okay, I know exactly who Rico Dowdle is. That is the problem.
Yeah, it's bad. Listen, Deuce Vaughn, I think he can do some nice things every now and then. Sure, why not?
As a scat back, yeah.
As a scat back, yeah, sure, why not? Zeke, I think he's a nice pass blocker.
And I think he's a complimentary piece to an RB room. I think.
But, like, Rico Dowell's, like... Okay, yeah, fine. You got a bunch of third stringers. Okay, cool. That's nice. Who's going to lead your team, right? Because, again, you don't have enough receivers to be an overly pass-happy team. You're going to have to run the ball a lot. Your running backs aren't good enough to be getting more than 5 carries in a game. Like, that's legitimately in the spot that you're in. It's bad. It is bad.
And it's even
and it's
paired
not a
with
good
the
scheme.
fact, and it's even paired with some of the issues I'll have with this offensive line, which we'll get to soon. But, like, first we'll get to the tight ends, and we'll get back to some good things. Because Jake Ferguson's a really good tight end. Jake Ferguson is awesome.
Yes. Mm-hmm. They have a tight end room that I genuinely like, right?
No, I do too. It's 3 deep. Straight up 3 deep.
Jake Ferguson might be the most traditional tight end. He might be the most traditional... I wrote down traditional tight end of all traditional tight ends.
Yeah, like his. If you looked up traditional tight end in the dictionary, you'd see Jake Ferguson.
Exactly,
and
that's
really good.
And
it's not a bad.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
That isn't. That's a really good thing. He is awesome.
Exactly.
He's good after the catch. He's got solid hands, a solid route runner.
And
He's a good blocker.
Schoonmaker's a good blocker too.
Schoonmaker's a good blocker.
He's not as good as a receiver, but he's there more to block, right?
And then Peyton Hendershot is just
another
a good third
traditional
option.
tight end. Yeah, exactly.
And that's not a bad thing. I want to make sure they understand. Traditional tight end is not a bad thing.
Yeah, no.
It's just we see a lot of different tight ends enter the league. You imagine an Evan Ingram's a receiving tight end. Brock Bowers isn't a traditional tight end. Like, these are traditional tight ends that are really good. It's a really good group.
Yeah, and then Hunter Lipke, I think as a fullback.
I have a story about Hunter Lipke.
Do you now? Well, I just want to say his role.
Okay, go ahead.
He's a fine blocker, like he's a capable blocker, but he's there more to be a receiver out of the backfield. And he's there more to get some carries. Like, that's what Lipke is. He's like a utility fullback.
He's a utility fullback. I was scouting for the 2023 NFL draft. And my friend from high school, we always talk about draft stuff. And he's like, dude, go watch Hunter Lipke. And I'm like, I've never heard that name before. And he's like, I just stumbled across his highlight reel. And it's the greatest fullback highlight reel I've ever seen in my life. And it's right. Go look up Hunter Lipke college highlights. It is the greatest highlight reel you'll ever see in your life. He was a stud. And I was really happy. I was surprised he didn't get drafted. I was fully convinced he was going to be drafted. There was a challenge. It might have actually, I forget who said it, but it was like you would win money if you got Mr. Relevant right. And we were getting close to it. I put in Hunter Lipke fully expecting to win. But he didn't. But he's awesome utility fullback. He can catch passes. He's a good runner. You saw him get carries last year because, well, for one, this running back room wasn't very good. But for two, he's that good of an athlete at that position. So I really like Hunter Lipke as a fullback. Maybe not so much as a blocker, but if you got creative with him, it'd be awesome. The issue is who's running this offense isn't very creative, unfortunately. So
yeah, exactly. Right now they use him more like an inline tight end. They honestly use him more as a blocker, which sucks. But and he's a good blocker, but it's like a waste, right? So you might be saying right now, you've talked so poorly about this team right now. I know that you're high on Dak and you're high on CeeDee Lamb and you like the tight end room, but with how negative you were on everything else, there's no way that this team should be as high as we have it. Then we get to this offensive line,
which I still have issues with, but
okay. Well, for me, that's like the redeeming factor.
It is a redeeming factor.
That is
Let's start with the two people that make this a redeeming factor: Tyler Smith at left guard and Zach Martin at right guard. Best guard combo in the league. Tyler Smith is just a freak, dude.
He's a stud.
A stud. But one of the best offensive linemen in general. Like, he's that good. And Zach Martin's in that same boat. And they are both a reason why this offensive line is going to be good next year. My issue comes from who you have at left tackle, who you have at right tackle. I liked Tyler Guyton as a project developmental left tackle. Now, I like that about Tyler Smith, and he was good immediately. There's a world where Tyler Guyton comes in and he's good immediately. Totally.
So
I just want to finish real quick. Yeah. I have concerns. I think it's different. I think it's about Guyton putting on more weight. I think it's about Guyton's development as well. I think it's going to be hard for him to have. I think for one, it's ridiculous to expect that because Tyler Smith wasn't only good immediately; he was great immediately. And two, it's tough to expect out of Guyton out of somebody that I think even requires more development at a harder position.
So here's my thing, and it goes back to something we mentioned way earlier on this. We were talking about the Titans, and we were talking specifically about Nicholas Petit-Frere and how he's kind of a raw guy. Yeah. But they have Bill Callahan, so you think it's going to work out. The Cowboys have always, for pretty much as long as I've been alive, they've been great at developing offensive linemen.
Yes, they have.
It is not the same offensive line coach as it was a decade ago, but
it's still a damn
Mike Solari, he developed Tyler Smith. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to develop Tyler Guyton.
And I'm totally with you. I think it's I don't have I don't doubt that Tyler Guyton is going to be good, like a good football player, like a really good left tackle. I have doubt that he'd do that year one. That's where I'm at. I'm kind of like, I don't think he can do that year one.
I
think
get
he
that
requires
concern.
a bit more development.
I get that concern.
And
For me, initially, I'm sorry, but initially, looking at Guyton, I was like, if this guy's a starting tackle day one, I'm going to be really worried about that team at left tackle. But because he landed on one of the 3 or 4 teams that has one of those great offensive line coaching staffs, I feel good. I do.
and that's fine. And I think that's totally fine expectation. And if you as a Cowboys fan have that same expectation, that's fine because they've been so good at it. I just happen to think it's probably going to take a year or two for Guyton to really come into himself. But I really like the draft pick because this is the team that should have taken him. A super athletic, big tackle like him that just needs to put on weight and refine his technique. I think he's going to end up being a really great player for you guys. I just have concerns about year one. That's where I'm at with Guyton. And then there's Terrence Steele, who is a starting right tackle, absolutely, but he has his games where he is bad, man. He's had some games where he's a rough player. But you could do worse. You could do worse than Terrence Steele.
I would say generally I feel good about Terrence Steele. He has his bad game every now and then, but I feel like generally he is a good football player. He's a good tackle, I would say.
I mean, I don't know, man. That's where I remember watching the film. I have a whole video out last year on one of his games of him being abysmal in pass protection. And, I mean, not that PFF's the all-say for it, but, I mean, PFF gave him a 50 overall as a player last year and 45 as a pass blocker. Yeah. And for a team that's probably going to have to pass the ball a lot, that concerns me.
Well, I think he's definitely a better run blocker. And, again, so we talk about, the running backs suck. But the offensive line is a more important aspect of that.
Absolutely.
And they have guys on the offensive line that make me think they're still going to be a good running team. They are. They just would be a hell of a lot better if they had a good running back. Also, the center. Right now has it as Brock Hoffman.
It's going to be Cooper.
It's going to be Cooper Beebe. And I don't know how you feel about Cooper Beebe.
I think he's good.
I loved him.
I thought he was good. I think I'm not worried about it at all. I didn't say I loved him. He was my 4th ranked center, pretty handedly for me. But still, I think he's good. I don't think he's a weak piece on this offensive line. I think the interior of the offensive line is also
strong. He is such a strong
player. He's a very strong player.
And putting that between Tyler Smith and Zach Martin should lead to a really good inside running game.
It should, absolutely. I agree, and I think it will. I have concerns more about this offensive line and pass protection on the outside at the 2 most important pass protection positions on the offensive line, the right and left tackle.
Okay.
On a team that is going to pass the ball a lot. It's just
but how much of that is going to be the deep passing game, and how much of that is going to be long developing concepts? Not much. Right. So I think that's an important thing. I think they're really going to hide that specific weakness. I like this offensive line's ability to do what they want to do. Right. Now, I think it will restrict their deep passing game because of that. But overall, I trust Dak Prescott a lot to make the right protection calls. I trust Dak Prescott a lot to do this entire thing. All right. And that's what this comes down to. In their weak areas, they're really weak. But they are really strong in other areas. And I feel like when you have a damn good offensive line and a top-notch quarterback with an elite receiver,
it always helps.
That's a formula for offensive success. Yep. It's just that simple. You might not be, this team is nowhere near as well-rounded as a lot of the teams we've already went over. But because they are so good in certain areas, I am willing to put this offense ahead of some of those more well-rounded offenses.
Yeah, and we're going to now move. Well, first, who's your offensive player of the year?
Dak.
I think it's pretty easy for both of us. It's Dak.
Yeah,
it's Dak. Who's your offensive rookie of the year?
Who's yours?
Cooper Beebe.
So we're in agreement. Cooper Beebe, yeah.
Yeah, Cooper Beebe. Again, I like the Guyton pick. Do not take this as a Guyton hate pick. I think it's a really good pick for where he went. I don't think he's going to put it together till next year, maybe the year after, because he's a project.
He's a project. He is.
He's got a lot to work.
I felt that way about Tyler Smith too.
Totally.
The only thing is he's playing tackle. So
he's not only playing tackle, but Tyler Smith didn't have to put on weight.
Yeah.
Guyton's got to put on weight.
That's true. Then X Factor, do you have that on the side?
My X Factor is on the side, and it's actually Tyler Guyton.
Really? That's a good one.
If Tyler Guyton does get the Tyler Smith treatment and is good immediately, yeah, I feel fantastic about this offensive line. Mm-hmm. Like even if Terrence Steele makes me like not feel good, that's 4 very, very good offensive linemen that you can like negate, like especially if it's on the blind spot of that credit, like not the blind spot, but like you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I'm stuttering here for some reason, but like even if Terrence Steele makes me feel bad about the whole situation, 4 great offensive linemen, and you just have to worry about the right tackle spot, you're feeling good.
Yeah.
So I Tyler Guyton's my X factor.
Yeah. So my X factor, this is probably my most unrealistic one. Definitely my most unrealistic, but I think it is still worth mentioning. It's Brandon Ayuk, Brandon Cooks. Brandon Ayuk is not on this football team.
Like we are not. I was like,
he is not on this football team.
Trade. I was like, the expecters a trade.
Yeah, I mean that too.
That'd be sick.
Yeah. No, Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
That is my. I still think it's unrealistic. But it's not impossible. It isn't. Just any of their receivers that aren't CeeDee Lamb need to really be an X factor. That's really what I want to say here, but I don't want to do a cop-out answer. Is your 12th man on the side?
He's not.
Okay. Let's move over to defensive scheme because my 12th man isn't either. They are going from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer has been out of the league for a little bit. Dan Quinn became a head coach.
So Dan Quinn did a fantastic job with this Cowboys defense. And I know the last game against the Packers where they scored at will left a sour taste in a lot of Cowboys fans' mouths. But, I mean, the results in the regular season and the last 2 years speak for themselves. This is one of the top units in football, leading the league in turnovers and sacks, what he's done with Micah Parsons. I mean, there's a lot to love what he did with this Cowboys team, and I think they're going to miss him tremendously. Miss him and his creativeness, because while he did run a lot of the same stuff, that cover 3, some things like that, he was creative with what he called as well. He was able to adapt. He was able to call blitz, like creative blitz packages. It was cool. Now you got Mike Zimmer, who I would argue a bit outdated as a defense coordinator at this point in his career.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you at all there. I mean, there was a reason this guy's been out of the league. It felt like McCarthy, he lost his defensive coordinator. He was like, man, who could I bring in? Who's someone with my job on the line? Who's someone that was once very good? Mike Zimmer, what's he up to in the year 2024? It's just, listen, when he first started doing what he was doing and Anthony Barr was still one of the best linebackers in football, and Harrison Smith was looking like a Hall of Famer. Eric Kendricks was a stud, and Everson Griffin, Daniil Hunter. Yeah, when that looked good, when those guys were in their prime, yeah, the idea of stacking the line of scrimmage and having a box safety play behind it, that was insane. That was crazy, reinventing the wheel. Now that's just a random Thursday afternoon. This is a common thing now. Double mug. Ooh, big whoop. Like, no. Now we have guys like Kyle Pitts playing tight end. If you run double mug often, you are going to get torched. Okay? It is such a big shift, right? Just ignoring how outdated Zimmer's entire scheme is. The shift from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer is absolutely monumental. Going from a soft man and zone coverage heavy, what you see is what you get type of defense that ran not just a lot of nickel, but a lot of dime, to a tight man heavy, disguise heavy defense that runs a 3-4 most of the time, despite very few additions to their personnel, right? They are going from one side of the defensive spectrum to the other and are changing they changed one starter. They added one starter. And they're acting like this is just going to go, well, you completely changed how that defense works. Completely. And
one
you are
starter
expecting
who used to work with Zimmer and is washed, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like
the big Eric Kendricks addition. Can we just talk about that linebacker room now? Because
Oh my god, dude. Oh my god, it's bad.
Yeah, it isn't good.
Damone Clark is all right. Like he's not 205 pounds. I'll tell you that. Like Marquise Bell, who has played actual linebacker snaps for him.
That might have made Damone Clark look worse because he kind of had to do 2 run fits because
Absolutely
we knew Marquise Bell was going to get killed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, remember that Bills game? Oh my god, that was
Bad.
We had to mention that eventually. By the way, if you're a Cowboys fan and you thought we weren't going to mention that Bills game, you were severely mistaken, because that was the clearest example of what happens when your base personnel is dime. You know,
but and I think Damone Clark can look better with bigger linebackers next to him.
Yeah,
is Eric Kendricks that guy? I mean, he won't be as bad as Marquise Bell, but he was bad for the Chargers last year. Like, he was not good. He's washed, unfortunately. He doesn't have the speed he used to have.
You know, just because you have a veteran that's familiar with the scheme, you know, they could still impact the team from like the bench. They don't need to start. You know, they don't have to.
If there's one player on here where you're like, maybe he can be something in the Marvion Overshown.
Well, I think that they have 2 young guys that might get out there a little bit. In not just Overshown, but I'm glad you said him. Liufau from Notre Dame.
I'll tell you this. I think if they put Liufau out there, I think you're not going to say. I didn't like his film.
I wasn't big on him, but at least he's a young guy.
Yeah, no, he's a young guy. I think if he's out there, you're going to have a bad time as a Cowboys defense, personally. I was not a fan of this pick of him at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's a high IQ player, right? So we've heard.
Yeah.
High IQ player. And he showed flashes of some nice, block disengaging.
Sure, but he's not a great athlete.
Yeah.
Even though he's a high IQ player, he doesn't have like immense strength either, so he'll get to the spot and just get moved anyway.
But he did blitz well. He was a nice blitzer, which in a Zimmer defense, okay, maybe they want that, right?
Maybe.
That is like the traits that they look for. But there's a lot of the important things that you look for. Angles. Kind of important for a linebacker.
Sideline to sideline speed.
Yeah. Open field tackling. Not too great at that. He's like a gimmicky guy, if you ask me.
Very gimmicky guy.
Yeah. Overshown, though, I think he might really carve out an important role. This is not a good... When Damone Clark is the brightest spot in your linebacker room, that's not a good thing.
No, it's not.
When you have... So I was taking my notes on, like, who else can, like, maybe switch to linebacker? Of course, Micah Parsons. With how much double mug they like to run, Marshawn Nealon, maybe he lines up in linebacker a little bit because they like the mugged-up linebacker look. He did that a lot in college. But when... I'm over here actively writing down, maybe we go back to Marquise Bell. That's a really bad sign for your linebacker.
Awful sign. That's an awful sign. But let's move from the linebackers now. Let's go to the guys that are in front of him on the defensive line. And, of course, start with one of the best defensive players in the league, in Micah Parsons. Maybe the freakiest overall, I would argue, the freakiest overall player in football. And there's not enough good things you could say about Parsons. He's, as a pass rusher, it doesn't get better. Yeah. Like from the moves to his bend to his get off, he's nearly impossible to block one-on-one. Nearly impossible. I do think he's a very good run defender. I think there are plays where you can attack Parsons and maybe like the Cardinals.
He's not the biggest guy on earth.
Yeah,
he is.
That's the issue. And that's how the Cardinals beat.
Drew Petzing was literally like, okay, Micah Parsons might demand tight ends to his side in passing situations. Has anyone tried, running the ball with the tight end on Micah Parsons' side? And let me tell you, that works.
Yes, it works.
He can. I'm not gonna say he's a liability against the run.
No.
But you can make him one. If you draw up the right schemes. You absolutely can.
Especially when the linebackers behind them are that bad.
Yes, exactly.
And But this is the takeaway from the fact that he is one of the top defensive players that we have in the league today. And I mean, he can play. Again, you already mentioned it. He might play linebacker for this team because he might need to.
And I want to say right now, right? Zimmer's scheme, I think everyone's in agreement. Going from Quinn to Zimmer is a really bad thing. But if there is a group that benefits the most, and I do think, people have been saying for a while, wait till Micah Parsons has a Defensive Player of the Year type of season. I think this is the best look for him. I do. Because stacking the line of scrimmage means he's going to get single teams. And when he gets single teams, he's probably winning, even against the run. Yeah. It's going to benefit him. I think he's going to be a benefactor of a negative scheme change, truly.
Yeah, right. And then you look at the guy across from him, DeMarcus Lawrence, still a really good edge rusher, man. He's not,
he's 32.
He's not what he's 32. He's not what he used to be. Maybe he doesn't have the step he used to have, but
he still has the strength.
Good. He still has the strength. He's a good edge setter, I would say. Good edge
and that's what it is, right? Today, he's not the pass rusher he once was.
No.
But he still is a hell of a guy to play contain and force outside runs to bounce back inside. I think he's really, really good at setting the edge, like you said. The interior, I feel really negative about. And, it helps that they're going to be double mugged up a lot. That's definitely a good thing. Maybe we see some guys that aren't on the interior defensive line playing interior defensive line. I think Marshawn Nealon getting moved to the interior defensive line. Very likely, because I don't know how you feel about these guys that they currently have listed as defensive tackles, but I do not like them.
Well, I like Osa Odighizuwa as a pass rusher. I don't like him as an every down defensive tackle.
Yes. And Mozzie Smith, I mean, you keep him out there because he was a first rounder. But he sucked last year.
He sucked last year. He was awful. Now, I do want to say one thing. It sounds like, from what I read, that the Cowboys asked him to drop in weight to be more of a pass rusher, in quotation marks. And I think that was an awful decision because that's not what Mozzie Smith was.
Terrible.
And if they ask him to put on weight and ask him to be what he is, which is a nose tackle, then I think you might see something there.
Do you think maybe the thought is with how much they're going to be stacking the line of scrimmage? Maybe the thought is you won't need to be this big guy because teams aren't going to try and run inside?
Well, that was I don't know. I think. Well, remember this was last year. Last year they asked him to lose weight.
Oh, I thought that you said go. Oh.
No. Last year they had asked him to lose weight. If at least that's what I read, and I don't know if that's what actually happened. That's what I read somewhere. But they asked him to lose weight, and he wasn't. Maybe in the effort to be a more athletic pass rushing defensive tackle. If that was the case, it was a very dumb decision because he's a nose tackle. He got him to be a run defending nose tackle. I don't know why they would have asked him to do that, but I've heard from multiple sources that was the case.
Yeah.
So maybe he puts on the weight back and he looks better as a nose tackle. You would hope so, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And then the thing is, this is a true 3-4, so they're going to have nose tackles when they're not mugged up. Yeah, I don't know, man. I do not know. I'm not. Or no, now it's a 4-3.
So Mike McCarthy dismissed questions about Mozzie Smith's weight, but think about it like this: he entered the league at 330 pounds. It was reported that by the time the season rolled around, he weighed in the upper 290s. That's not Mozzie Smith's game.
Yeah. No, again, and this is a 4-3 now, right? Meaning that the entire nose tackle thing, that's not really what they're going to be doing. I mean, they could still have him over the center, do some creative stuff with the front, sure, but now you're not going to be wanting him playing nose more often. I really think this scheme change, it could benefit Smith because last year, whatever they were trying didn't work. So now just the change with more guys blitzing, he doesn't get double teamed as much. It doesn't matter. He was still getting wrecked by one guy. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe he could bounce back. He was kind of like a project-y type of guy anyway. But overall, there's no one on that interior defensive line that I feel very good about. I think Marshawn Nealon is going to have to switch somewhere. He is someone I see as an athlete you want to toy around with.
Totally.
But but the technique is really bad with
Do you
him.
think he's big? Do you think he's big enough to play defensive tackle?
He's so strong.
Yeah, but he's 270.
You have him gain a little bit. You have him gain.
Like I see him as an ideal 3-4 left, defensive end.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think in a 4-3, you line him up as a 3-tech. He'll be fine. I really think he's so strong. Him being a little bit underweight, I'm fine with it. And I also think, listen, if they don't have him as a mugged up linebacker, I'd be really surprised. I think that's more likely going to be what they do with him. Because that's what he did in college, literally. Like, he was doing that all the time. So, again, he's someone I see them toying around with a lot. And he's probably one of the only people where I'm like, in a Zimmer scheme, that'll be a fun experiment. That and I guess Parsons. But besides that, I mean, overall, I don't like how this shift affects everyone. Especially the defensive backs. Especially them. Trevon Diggs and Deron Bland were really good as, like, these off-man kind of reactionary corners. Now, they're going to be a lot tighter. Now, they're going to get beat. A lot. And when they get beat, it's going to be touchdowns.
And Deron Bland already got beat a lot last year. He just had the turnovers to cover up for it.
But now there's going to be less turnover opportunities because of how this defense works. I like their safeties. I like Malik Hooker. I like Donovan Wilson.
Malik Hooker's good. Donovan Wilson's good.
Like, those are respectable players to play up top. But how much are they going to be playing up top? I don't know. Of course, I like Trevon Diggs and I like Deron Bland in the right scheme. This is not the right scheme. Like, this scheme change affects the defensive backs more than anything. Because they could really fall off. Really fall off. Maybe you're supposed to bring in guys when you make a huge scheme shift like this.
Can I say something again? We're talking about all-in team, right?
Yeah.
We're saying that here are the different starters across both offense and defense. You have a new starting left tackle who's a rookie coming in for your Hall of Fame left tackle that you let go. You have a new center coming in as a rookie. And then you have a new running back who was already on the team prior, and Zeke Elliott, part of leading an awful running back room. That's all the new starters on offense. Mm-hmm. All of them. And then on defense, it is Eric Kendricks. That's 4 new starters, and one of them on defense with a whole new defensive scheme for a team that wants to go all in.
It's awful.
That's crazy.
It's awful.
Awful. And you look at their draft picks, and I look at Guyton, and I look at Nealand, and I look at, these are let's plan for the future picks. Let's draft for the future picks, right? It kind of leads to me thinking they're pretty done with Dak Prescott. And, it's going to take a lot for them to stay on him.
Mm-hmm. So, again, I kind of want to go back to this later on, but keep in mind, this team could have been ranked a lot lower, right? They could have been. I know initially you look at this ranking and you say, the Dallas Cowboys at 21, this can't be even remotely right. I'm telling you right now,
been ranked
lower. There's a huge argument for them to be lower.
I'll tell you like this. We were kind of like that in the way of the Dallas Cowboys. They can't be ranked lower, right? And then we continually moved them down our power ranking as we talked about it.
But then I think, I will admit right now, as we've looked at the roster, we haven't really hit on just how much of an impact player a Micah Parsons is. That shifts it so much.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
How great of a player Tyler
CeeDee
Smith
Lamb
is.
and
CeeDee Lamb,
Smith,
Zach Martin. And then, of course, Trevon Diggs with the scheme shift. Okay, probably a little bit of a fall off. I can't imagine going that far off of what he does well, right?
Trevon Diggs is still a very good corner.
Yeah, and surely they'll still incorporate a little bit of off man, right? And a little bit of soft. There's no way they don't. And it's the same with Deron Bland. You don't. Come on, really? Let's be realistic here. That'd be completely and utterly idiotic.
Yep.
Now, are we going to come back to this clip when Deron Bland and Trevon Diggs have the worst seasons of their careers? Yeah. But, in all seriousness, they're going to play to these players' strengths a little bit. These guys have NFL jobs. Zimmer, at one point, was one of the best defensive minds in the sport. He's not an idiot. defensive superlatives. I want to hear what you think right here.
I mean, defensive player of the year, it's Micah Parsons.
Yeah,
pretty easily.
For
right?
sure. And then defensive rookie.
Marshawn Kneeland, for sure.
So, it's for me, it's a little bit weird, where it's like, Kneeland, I think the scheme can be a little bit... I think he could benefit from that, right? And I think this is a good scheme fit because he's able to do what he did in college. I just don't like his technique, especially at an NFL level. I think the gimmicky Leofau is going to go out and be the defensive rookie for them.
I think that's good. I could totally see it. I didn't like his tape whatsoever, so I just can't imagine it.
He's a good blitzer, right?
Yeah, he's a good blitzer.
And I think
I think Kneeland will be on the field more than he would, and I think Kneeland would, like, again, in those mugged up coverages that you keep talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I just think there's a much higher chance of him getting a lot more play time, of having a bigger impact than Leofau would.
I guess that's fair. I just look at, the opportunities, of course. Kneeland is gonna probably have more opportunities. Probably. But I also think there's a lot more of an opening for Leofau to kind of emerge as this guy. Right? Meanwhile, Kneeland, I think, is a lot more of like a gimmicky, okay, mugged up linebacker. What about when we're doing other stuff? What about a traditional, base? What then? Right? Yeah. Who's more likely to be out in those situations? I think that's when Leofau might be out there. So I guess I said Kneeland's going to have like more snaps. Kneeland, we know for a fact he's going to be guaranteed a role. Leofau, I think, has more potential to get a large role. I don't think either of them are going to have a great season. Let me just make that clear. Yeah, I just think Leofau is going to potentially carve out more of a role just because I don't like their linebacker room.
And then I have my 12th man on here. My 12th man is going to be DeMarvion Overshown. I do think for the most part, Damone Clark and Eric Kendricks are probably going to see the field most of the time. But I think DeMarvion Overshown can come in on third down situations. I thought he was good in coverage in college. And I think he can start to carve out a role for himself on that team. So I'm going to go with Overshown.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I'm willing to say a very similar thing. 12th man, Overshown. I don't know if he's going to be the starter right away. If he becomes the starter, we'll see.
Our 12th man is mute, but still, as of right now.
Yeah, we'll see. Also, when they're running some more nickel, maybe Jordan Lewis. But I just don't like the player.
I don't think Jordan Lewis is very good. So
also, Marquise Bell as a nickel. You think that might work?
That's something I was thinking about. Is Marquise Bell as a 12th man? It could. I think Marquise Bell.
I might even switch it to that. I might make it Marquise Bell, whether that's a nickel or linebacker. I'm willing to say
that's fine. I'm gonna go with Overshown, but Bell's a good pick.
Okay, special team. Now this is a part where I actually feel very good about them. They have a coordinator that has been there for a while. John Fassel. Some people call him Fossil because he's like 70.
He's there for a reason.
Yeah, he's an amazing special teams coordinator. The only real overly notable one that's really carved out like a name for himself. Their punter, Brian Anger, averaged the third most yards per punt in the league last year, 51.4. And their kicker, Brendan Aubrey, needs no introduction. Awesome.
Yeah,
he's been automatic for pretty much the entire regular season, drilling all 10 of his attempts from 50+, which is wild. He's a crazy good player. And just having a weapon like that could consistently make those kicks from deep, it's such a big deal, man. It's such a big deal. Kevontae Turpin and Deuce Vaughn are both impressive returners in my mind. I feel like those were definitely going to be their picks. Is there anyone else you think maybe they mentioned?
You might see Jalen Tolbert return a kick or two.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about it.
There is one name I just want to throw out there, right? We heard about Justin Fields as a kick returner for the Steelers, which might not happen, they're trying it out. How about Trey Lance for the Cowboys?
He could. I don't know if he's quite the runner Fields is, but he's a good runner. He could do it. He could do it.
I could definitely see it, especially if you want to try those take
The
the kick,
throwback,
lateral.
yeah.
You know, like I think that's a good idea to at least try.
Totally.
I could definitely see them
that.
trying it.
Totally see that.
I also, do you think him having a bigger arm than Fields might benefit them in some ways? No, not really, right? Unless you really want to try, like, here's the only thing I
Unless
thought
it's some crazy stuff.
of. The only thing I thought of was like a type of, and this is really wild, but like if there's 1 second left in the hat or in the game, I guess, maybe you try a like Hail Mary after he's about to get tackled or before he's about to get tackled, something like that. Like that. I just mean like literal throw it up and Kevontae Turpin's all the way back. And then it's like you reset the kick return, I guess.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
But that seems, first off, very situational and huge risk. But it was something maybe I thought about. And because of his strong arm, he'll be able to make the off-platform throw.
Right.
Just throwing that out there. No pun intended. I mean, I feel like Trey Lance, you open a lot of opportunities with him as a returner, potentially.
Right. I could see that. I could totally see that. I'm with you.
And
but
then,
now I think we're good. Well, yeah, we'll talk about the guys who can block, of course.
Uh-huh. Well, there's some guys.
Lipke is going to be out there.
Yeah.
He's not a great blocker
Lipke,
overall, but on the.
Yeah. Lipke, there's a lot of names I just want to throw out as potential. Punt team, kick team, all that stuff. Marquise Bell, Liufau, Overshawn, Hendershot, definitely. Schoonmaker, Hunter Lipke, Nealon, I mean, in a similar way to Sam Williams, might even be a gunner because Nealon is that crazy of an athlete despite his size. Mm-hmm. Sam Williams, by the way, he's someone I want to mention because last year, despite being 6'4", 260, he had some reps as gunner.
Really?
6'4", 260, and he had a couple reps at gunner last year.
That's crazy.
Yeah, wild. But, they experiment. Listen, Fassel will do some of that creative stuff. That's why I think he's probably one of those people that heard about the special teams change to the kickoff rules, and he was just like, oh, my God, just wait till you see what I'm about to cook up.
Right.
Like, this, I really think the Cowboys special team unit, I'm really excited to see what they do because they're going to do some creative stuff. They always do. They really try everyone at every spot. And I think Lance is not going to be an exception whatsoever. Lance is going to get involved somehow. Whether that's in preseason or whatever, I'm excited to see it.
Me too.
Let's talk about their overall season prediction. We'll go through the schedule, but first let's start with the ceiling and floor. We have an 8-game difference between the ceiling and floor because, again, these teams, right, especially when you have that many weaknesses, but you have that many high caliber players, like, there's a lot of different ways your season can go.
Right.
I have their floor as 5-12. And the ceiling we agreed on was 13-4.
Yep.
Again, we're in that range where teams are really fluctuating all over the place. My final prediction was 8-9. What about you?
Mine is 9-8.
Okay. So once again, all 4 of our recordings today, we've been one off of each.
One off.
Let's look at this schedule now. At Cleveland, this one I feel like could be pretty good.
It could be really good. I mean, that's this Browns defense versus this Cowboys offense, and I do worry. I wonder, like, it's going to be Tyler Guyton against Myles Garrett. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's concerning. But they're going to do some stuff to help him, I imagine. Putting tight ends on his side and all that stuff. But then, what are you going to do on the other side, right? You got Terrence Steele, who could be a little bit of a weakness. And we know that offense, Martin Emerson and some of those guys are going to try and give Denzel Ward, are going to prevent Dak from getting the ball out quick. So that could be a mismatch, 100%.
And then as for, the defensive side of things for the Cowboys, you're going against this really good Browns offensive line that's going to want to run the football with Chubb. We know how bad this team was as a run defense late in the season last year. Are they going to still be that same thing?
I don't think so.
I know they'll stack the box more.
They're going to stack the box more. Last year they ran dime as their base. This year it's going to be 3-4. It's going to be completely different.
And now it's, can Deron Bland match up against Amari Cooper?
Yeah.
Can he match up? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's also Deshaun Watson's your quarterback. And it's like, it's hard to pick the Browns whenever Deshaun Watson's your quarterback.
Uh-huh. But in Cleveland to open the season, maybe we do pick Cleveland.
I could go with the Browns. Yeah. I can go with the Browns.
But then New Orleans, the Saints coming into Dallas.
Yeah,
I feel like the Cowboys.
Cowboys. Yeah.
But then playing against Baltimore could give them some issues, man.
Baltimore could give them some big issues, big issues, and I'd lean Baltimore here.
Yeah, I can't disagree, right? Then you play against the Giants. It's important to keep in mind, this is going to be a Thursday night game, but it's important to keep in mind the Giants did give the Cowboys some trouble last year.
Totally did. But this is where I lean to my scorecard with the Giants, and I say, is Evan Neal at right tackle? If yes, loss. If no, the Giants have a chance of winning this game. And I think Evan Neal is still playing tackle at this point.
That's
fair. I think he gets worked. I think it's going to be a hard – I think the Giants' offense is going to struggle against the Cowboys' defense.
That's fair. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers, this team can really be all over the place, right?
Any given day, given game, yeah.
Yeah. So, again, that's a maybe. It feels like every Steelers game is a maybe unless you're looking at it from the Steelers' perspective.
Right.
Then Detroit.
I feel
Detroit
pretty – yeah, I think Detroit beats
really,
them. I think they get
good.
revenge for the whole ref thing that happened last year. And I think they come in this game and they work the Cowboys personally.
Then they have a bye week. Then they go into San Fran. Come on, San Fran's killing them. Same way they did last year. There's no reason to think otherwise. I even think that they follow that up with another loss in Atlanta. Right?
Yeah, I think that could be the case for sure. Yeah, no, I don't like how Kyle Pitts could be a nasty matchup into this Cowboys defense against these linebackers.
Yeah, it's that. Listen, if you're going double mug, Kyle Pitts is going to pick you apart. They can't go double mug against a team with such an athletic tight end. Even if they don't, though, you said it yourself. Kyle Pitts is a matchup nightmare. Bijan Robinson is a matchup nightmare. They have a lot of guys that are going to generate problems for the Cowboys, 100%.
I think the Eagles-Cowboys split games, personally.
Really?
I do.
So I'm going to say this right now. Despite how I feel about Philly being the better team, I definitely think the Eagles are the better team. I think the Cowboys match up pretty well.
I do think they do as well. But I also think about, again, we're leaving these receivers on an island against these two good quarterbacks.
How did that work? How did that work against the Buccaneers last year, though?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I would argue Deron Bland. I don't feel confident about Deron Bland on an island with Devontae Smith. I don't.
Yeah, but my point is with the blitzes going to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is not making the right decisions.
Right, but as we talked about kind of in the Bucks video, Kellen Moore is going to focus on helping Jalen Hurts with these blitz packages. I think there's going to be really close games, as they always are. I think they split.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm willing. Again, I ask, if one team were to go 2-0 against the other, you think Philly is, or you think the Cowboys are, if you were to pick?
I'd probably go Philly, personally.
Okay. I'd go Dallas, actually, is my thing.
That's fine.
I don't think it's because Dallas is better, obviously. I think it's just because they match up well.
They match up. Yeah, match up well.
Then Houston on prime
Battle
time.
for Texas. I feel pretty confident about Texas, the Texans winning this game.
Yeah, I do too.
Cowboys,
Washington,
Commanders.
Cowboys are going to
I'm confident. Yeah, Micah Parsons will have 5 sacks.
Mm-hmm. And then the Giants, again, can give them some problems. Maybe we have them.
Let me bring up my checklist one more time.
Yeah.
No, but
Evan Neal shouldn't be starting now. So.
Yeah, he shouldn't be starting at right tackle. Maybe he's at guard.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I could see the Giants. They could win this game.
I think Cincinnati picks them apart.
I agree.
Frankly. The only thing stopping that is maybe Micah Parsons has a day eating Joe Burrow alive. At Carolina, I think the Cowboys win and they really stack up the scoreboard so they can go ahead and finish as the top scoring team because they care more about that than actually winning the playoffs. Then Tampa Bay, that should be an interesting one. I think the Cowboys match up pretty well against them as a pass-heavy team that wants to throw it across the middle. Philly, we already talked about that. And then Washington, once again, they're going to drop 50.
Yeah.
So that's all for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you want more of my content, check out the links down below. My podcast is down there. Of course, if you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe maybe. And if you want more content like this, check out Dino's channel where we've been posting more videos just like this. He's going to be posting the next part of this, so if you're really excited for that, definitely subscribe, turn on notifications, all that stuff, so you know when the video is going up. He's doing the evens, I'm doing the odds. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, I'll see you next time.